I think I'd still be cautiously optimistic.
Mm.
There's a fair play of optimism, but there's still a lot of unknowns, which are basically more driven by the pandemic. So we have to leave it to the medical experts to guide us. On the financial side, I guess we've seen the structures of how economic activity could eventually be revived.
Mm.
Diba? I think that the key to any business, and this is what I guess I've been telling a few clients, is to keep your engine warm. It's difficult to restart
Mm.
a business that is uh, on a cold level, no? Which means there's no activity. Warm is okay.
And it's not so much because of portfolio flows. We know that there is no net foreign buying in the stock market, no? So that's a proxy to, of course, also foreign direct investments, which did not improve either in 2020. Naturally, kasi merong pandemic, no? So wag na nating wag nating uh, biruin yung mga tao na yun ang dahilan. The real reason is imports collapsed, no? Substantially. Single month in April, it fell 65%.
Mm.
30% na lang natira, no? 30-35% na lang natira ng dating ini-import natin.
Now, translating to higher US interest rates means the dollar could bottom out. Remember, last year, the dollar was practically close to dead. Now, we're seeing signs of activity. No? So that activity can bring because of the higher oil price, demand for dollars will also rise. Second, you have hopefully with the reopening of the economy, we'll be able to have the importations come back. So that will be good for the economy. So that will at least create the demand to bring us back to 49 to 49.70.
Well, build this kind of evolving, Marvin. Kasi, again, not as many people are traveling abroad. Not as many people are moving around using airplanes, di ba? So maybe airports don't get the priority this time. Mas importante yung public transport within the Philippines, no? And even especially in the metropolis, no? That we make them more efficient and more capable of complying with the new protocols of the new normal. So it has been reprioritized, no? And if the amounts are big enough, okay, are sizable enough, should help boost the economy. And again, we're hoping that the national government already learned from 2020 that underspending on construction is bad for the economy. It has a dismal effect on the economy. In the third quarter, construction from the public sector declined not just year on year, but quarter on quarter. No? Of course, may typhoons, but it doesn't seem to be a valid excuse. Now, if they've learned this and they apply this in 2021 and 2022, hopefully the new administration also, then we can depend on infra to continue to support our economy. And again, hopefully already geared towards the new normal, the better normal, Marvin. Hindi on the same items, no? Kasi iba na yung pangangailangan ng economy by 2022, 2023. And even with the vaccine, I feel that, things will really not completely return to normal. And the reprioritization of build makes sense, no?
How about the traditional banking and property sectors that for some part in 2020, they were not moving in stride to the telcos and the supermarkets and the tech stocks in the US. But since we're at the cusp of being better already, how do you see them for 2021? Either banks, then property.
Well, eventually, if you're looking at a recovery play, then the best bet are basically the banking, no? Because basically the banks got it all, no? So remember that banks are eventually the engine that provides grease to the economy. So if money is the grease, they provide the money everywhere, di ba? So with the increased use of digitalization, you're better off spreading the money across the country. So definitely, once people see the recovery, people will get loans. So a rise in interest rate should be good for banks. So the banking sector should improve, no? Contrary to what people are also fearing, that there could be higher NPLs. But you have to remember that this is what we saw last year was a disruption, diba? Because we wanted to stay safe. It's not because everybody wanted to lay off people, diba? It's just business halted. They need to preserve themselves. So once you further reopen the economy, you have the confidence, definitely jobs will come back. So the other sectors will normalize, diba? So it may take a bit longer for other sectors such as the airlines, the hotels, but once business starts picking up, they will slowly the potential growth will slowly filter down to the other sectors, one way or the other.
Got it. You think people will go back to malls as how it was prior to the pandemic? Or
Yeah,
because
I think so.
online?
Well, if you look at how the mall traffic from what used to be a 30% during the lockdowns, in the fourth quarter went to a size between 50 to 70% pre-pandemic level. So people need to go out. So of course there will be a shift in how their consumer patterns, but again, it's really working on a new routine. You can either shop online, pick it up when you go to the mall, have a quick lunch, and go home. Diba? So it's really building confidence on an individual basis. And this is something that economics cannot provide. It is really having the right information of prevention, diba? So you wear a mask, you wear a face shield when you go out, you social distance, you have to live OA. You have to be overacting in everything. You touch me, I sanitize. Diba? So you need to be able to do that so that you'll gain confidence. Now, when people starts going out, and if you look at the traffic is already back, which is a good sign, no? So once we get to see more transportation normalize and people go out, then that's the time we can reassess. Of course, the fourth quarter issues of rising cases are still here, no? Given the slightly cool weather, no? This is something that people were worried about, which could see rise in cases. So if we're able to, shall I say, manage not to have higher cases back over 5,000 a day, then better. Diba? I think in a survey that I did over Twitter and a few of my clients that I've talked to, they feel comfortable if the cases were below 3 digits. So you're thinking of anything below 100 cases per day. So we're still far from there, but look at how many people are going up. Imagine that if we were doing as 100,000 per day, then now we're down to 4,000. A lot of people have already come out. They went out. No? What more if there's a vaccine? Yeah. So there will be really a jump in activity once people get to have the vaccine.
It's probably, again, not going to go back to normal, Marvin, but I think the take-up rates will remain still pretty solid. More so if you're seeing more and more people go back to the workplace. No? There was a time when only like 30% of workers were in the office. I think now it's getting closer to 60. No? And the other thing is, the demand is shifting. And nga, you talked about, sabi mo kanya, binibiro mo ako, minsan Tarosa, it's a good place to be. It's there is this new flavor of of the usual city and metropolis grid, no, na demand also for townhouses because it's easier to do the protocols. Whereas in condominiums, there are many common areas, diba? Yung elevators and places where you could actually get the infection, mga indoors, no. whereas those that are outdoors and outside Metro Manila are starting to look attractive. No? And I think many of the developers are making the necessary adjustments, no, to see or to change the priorities again, just like build on where the developments should go. You know? More outdoor activities again. So it doesn't mean though that condominium demand will fall. It's just that maybe the expectation in the past will be a little bit off track, no? Marvin. Kasi bumabalik na rin, no? Again, mobility numbers are very encouraging of late. We're hoping this small spike in infections will be transitory. And if we see a recovery in mobility in March, I think that's key to sustaining demand for condos in the cities. Sa banking naman, well, it's digital. Though those who invested a lot on digital ahead of time, and people are really learning how to use it now. No? They're forced to do it. Well, hindi ko naman sinasabing mabuti yung pandemic, but that's one of the silver linings of the virus. It taught us to use the space more. No? I think everybody knows this already, but for those who have relatives and friends who are still resisting, maybe they should really encourage them to get into it. No? Even trading, even registering for a fund, you can do it now very conveniently online.
And what's interesting was people na ayaw talaga mag-QR code, they were forced to know what QR codes were already.
And biometrics, di ba? I mean, you don't need to plug in the number anymore. You can just use your thumb mark to...
And I believe that fintech will be pretty much ingrained also in banking transactions.
Correct. And more people will actually gain access to credit because of that.
And I think what's nice about that is it gives also equal opportunity for people who are in far-flung places that have a very, very hard time going to a physical branch. So I think long-term also, it will have a very, very good benefit, especially for people who are not in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally, they realize the value of electronic. Yun lang, yun. We need the infra din, Marvin. No?
2021, personally, would you be more cautious or would you be more aggressive? Based on, at least the way I see it is, March 2020, there was a lot of unknown. We just knew there was a virus. But now, parang you already know who the enemy is, how it looks like, what degree is it. Given all of that, what we know as of January 2021, cautious or aggressive in your approach to things?
Well, still, people will still have to be selective and cautiously optimistic. Last year, I wouldn't blame a person if he didn't get into the market even through the months of May or July and missed out on some of the opportunities because the uncertainty was really very high. But when things cleared up, when we saw the unemployment rate fall from, kasi it rose from 5 to 17 yung jobless rate, di ba? Talagang it's very scary. People thought it was going to go up to 20, 25, no? But once we saw the validation that it went down to 10 and now below 9, heading towards 8, 7%, and that should give you enough confidence that, maybe the worst is really over. And as long as we don't have spikes that we saw back in 2020, in fact, our infection rates aren't really as bad as other countries. If we avoid those and we keep the healthcare system within their capacity, within a comfortable capacity, it makes sense to be in the market, Marvin. Really makes sense.
I think I'd still be cautiously optimistic. But there's a fair play of optimism, but there's still a lot of unknowns, which are basically more driven by the pandemic. So we have to leave it to the medical experts to guide us. On the financial side, I guess we've seen the structures of how economic activity could eventually be revived. Diba? I think that the key to any business, and this is what I guess I've been telling a few clients, is to keep your engine warm. It's difficult to restart a business that is on a cold level, which means there's no activity. Warm is okay.
Yep.
So even in investing, so you might feel cautious, but it's nice to dabble on a few things, so to speak. Keeping your feet wet keeps you grounded.
Wow. Well said, well said. Before we put this to a close, any final words of encouragement or inspiration to everyone that's watching this as we start the year? Something that you could say that could help them to push through for the year.
Well, I think the word today, uh, there's one O. No, I think the letter O is something that we want to focus on, which means opportunities. So when we think of tomorrow, there are more O's. So given that we've seen the vaccine hopes, the government spending, in fact, even an election is actually a tailwind to our economy because these candidates will be spending a lot. So that will provide a tailwind in the economy. And that starts around fourth quarter this year. So that should help add to the potential liquidity that will be spent in the economy. So you have government spending, you have the additional money from the 2020 budget, then you have this potential election spending. So if that materializes, that could be a tailwind that will bring us closer to a recovery in 2022.
I think it's really being hopeful, Marvin. No? I mean, not really giving up. Just keep on pushing forward, um, because I mean, if we talked about it about these things last May, you probably won't even listen to me because it's so discouraging. Diba? Everything was so discouraging. But now we're here in January, and you can see that things have turned out much better. Of course, still far from ideal. We just have to keep on pushing forward and adjust to this new environment. And I don't really think we will be going back completely to where we were back in January, December of 2019. And as much as you can, get the training that you need. Try to learn as much as you can, and guys like Marvin provide you with all of this information online. Maximize it. Go out and maybe get a degree from a foreign country, because it's not as difficult as before, although of course it's not exactly the same. So there are many opportunities that arose from all of this adversity, and it's just a matter of really taking advantage of it, because we never thought we could actually do these things before, and now realize that pwede naman pala, we can actually carry out some of these tasks. Like I was I'm president of the Economic Society, Marvin, and it's a conference that usually it's really a gathering and meeting of minds physically, and that's been going on for 54 years already.
Whoa.
For the first time this year, wala. But we managed to do an online event, and it turned out to be very good because all the papers were presented for 3 straight days, and everyone can watch it in Facebook up to now. So turns out na meron ding advantages talaga, and there are things that you can actually achieve that you never thought you could prior to the pandemic. So again, may mga nawalan sa atin sa buhay, so I guess that's really painful, and we cannot really completely remove that. And then some of our relatives and friends lost their jobs. They're in industries that are considered non-essential, but they can skill up. They can slowly reinvent themselves. There is space, and Filipinos are very good at many things. You can speak English. There's so many new skills that we can still learn, even at ripe age like mine, more than 50 years old. I'm still willing to learn all of this use of Zoom and use of technology. I try to learn and keep up with the likes of Marvin, so I can get 1% of his subscriber base. So that's all I can share. So again, I think what's important is meron tayong mga bagong nagagawa na akala natin hindi natin kaya noon. So yun ang kailangan natin bigyan ng tuon, focus.
I like what you said. No, before we put this to a close, there are certain things that you can pivot and shift so that this crisis would not destroy you or define you. And like what you said, yung Zoom, I'm actually more productive also now because you don't have to. If we did a video before the pandemic, no, I had to go to Makati. We had lunch,
Exactly.
then we had
Yeah.
to move, then shoot, then balik, and the travel time for that will take siguro half day na everything. But this one, we're done quickly. So there are silver linings also on top of this. And if there's one thing that you said, leverage the internet because there's so many things that you can do off the internet that I think is cost effective, is efficient, and there are some things that you can do that don't require a lot of technical know-how. Sipag lang talaga yung kailangan. But there are also things if you want to go deeper, yun yung kailangan talagang pag-aralan for you also to get better on this. So thank you so much, June, Neri, BPI. Thank you so much, Jonas Ravelas, BDO, for joining us. And to everyone watching this, I hope this video helps you trade well, trade strong, trade smart. See you all again soon, and God bless you all.